So as for the examples for this congruent figures, this congruent polygons that we're looking at, they're actually pretty straightforward. So the only thing that matters, just even based off what we're the notes, the actual part about it, is that the order of. So again, I have this note: order of letters is important because this kind of tells you how we're supposed to set these up and how these are congruent. All right. So again, orders of letters is important, and if you notice when you're actually kind of going along with this stuff, it'll kind of coincide with what we're looking at. All right. So Hij is congruent to Lm and O. What are the congruent corresponding parts? So in this case, we're just going to like list the pairs that are matching up, right, with what we're looking at. But again, the order of letters is important. So watch how this is going to work. It says Hij, which goes from Hij to K, right? So it kind of goes in this motion. Whereas Lm and O goes in Lm and, right, Lm and O. They start on different sides of each polygon and they kind of go in an opposite direction. That tells us like what's going on with this stuff. All right. So be careful when you're looking at this. Watch out for it. It's super important again because the order matters. H to I, I to J, J to K. H to I to J, J to K. L to M. So what it's saying is if we have HI, which side is congruent to HI? So if we have this as HI, right? H to I, even in the actual problem, well, L to M. So that means that this side is congruent to it. A lot of you might think that since HI is on the left, it would be congruent to ON, but that's not true, right? It has to go with the order. You have to follow that path, right? And so we can kind of figure out the rest of it. It's pretty straightforward. HI is congruent to LM. Remember, when you write this whole stuff, we have to have the little segment symbol above it, right? This line. If you just write letters, that doesn't tell us anything. It's the segment symbol above it, because if it's just letters, it doesn't tell us anything. So H to I, L to M. IJ, would that be congruent to MN? Notice how, again, I'm going the same path as I had before. Right? H to I to J, L to M to N. And we can fill out the rest of it too. JK is congruent to NO. All right, start from the bottom, J to K, N to O. And lastly, KH, which we can do, I don't know, we can do like a circle here, is congruent to OL. OL. So pretty straightforward. Find the congruent corresponding pieces, but also the order is important, so that's what you have to learn. We also are talking about the angles too. This one's a little bit easier, right? Because this is the same order. So H is going to be congruent to L. So angle H is congruent to angle L. H, L. I and M are both the second one, so those are going to be ones congruent to I, M. I to M. J is corresponding, so it's congruent to N. And then lastly, K is congruent to O. The angle's a little bit easier because it tells you which ones they are, even up here, right? Because the order matters, it makes things a lot simpler when we're looking at it. All right, and then so the next one, same idea. Right now we have these two triangles. We're kind of show you what's congruent to what. They are congruent, so we can kind of mark things to be congruent. All right. We have this information where angle B is 30, angle E is 30, C is 75 degrees, and D would be that too, right? But again, because these are congruent, we know that this is congruent to that, so on and so forth. Okay. So A is congruent to D, B is congruent to E, and then C is congruent to F. All right. And then what does it tell us? What does it tell us? Angle B is 30 degrees. Angle E is also 30 degrees, which follows the idea, right? Because E and B are congruent. And lastly, angle C is 75. So what is angle D, right? That's kind of our idea. That's what we're looking for. Okay. So to solve for this, we do know that we at least have two angles here, which helps us out, right? So let's at least solve for A. So to solve for A, we know that this is a triangle, so angle A plus angle B plus angle C It's going to equal to 180 degrees. And what we labeled is we know that we don't know what A is. We know that B is 30. We know C is 75. And again, because it's a triangle, we're going to add up to 180. This makes it kind of straightforward. All right, so we can solve for A. So angle A, when you add these two, you get 105. It's equal to 100. So again, you just subtract 105 from both sides. So you'll get angle A is equal to 75 degrees. All right. So we had this information, and we know since these two are congruent, right, by the third angle theorem, by the fact that these two are congruent, we know that A and D is the same. So since this right here is also 75, angle A is congruent to angle D, right? It's kind of what we talked about with this congruent triangle things. They're congruent. So that means that 75 is equal to angle D. And so that's our answer. Okay. And again, it helps out because we know these are congruent. We know that D and A are congruent and C and F are congruent because they're based that these two triangles are congruent. All right. On the back. All right. Are the triangles congruent? Justify your answer. Yeah, let's take a look at this stuff. Let's see what we got, see what we know. All right. So what do we know? We know that, let's kind of list this. Angle A is congruent to, this is our given, right? So let's write what we have given. Angle A is the same as angle E. Is congruent to angle E. We know this side AB, right there, A to B, the same as E to D. AB is congruent to, and then we also know that D is congruent to angle B. Angle D is congruent to angle B. What else does it tell us? Oh, check it out. We have this 4 here, which is congruent to that 4. So then BC, side BC, is congruent to DC. And then lastly, we know that congruent, CA is congruent to CE. Is there anything else? No, those are all labeled themselves. All right, cool. So let's take what we know. All right. So somehow we have to show that these are two congruent, right? Luckily, these lines, yeah, they're congruent, right? We know these sides are congruent and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't tell us anything. We haven't gotten into that part yet. There's one theorem we do know, though, because there's one thing that's missing, right? The one idea we know is that if the triangles are congruent, we know that the angle, the triangle, or the angles are congruent, then the angles could be congruent too, right? And so there's a few things that's going on, right? We know this angle is congruent to that one, this angle is congruent to that one. We also know the sides are all congruent too. So the sides help us out. But by the third angle theorem, since A and E are congruent and D and B are congruent, we're going to have this congruent angle right here at C. Angle C is congruent to angle C. Right? And so it kind of helps start, since all the sides are congruent, all these angles are congruent too. Notice, right, they have this cross line. Everybody always forgets them. These are also vertical angles. So there's a lot of reasons why these are congruent, but it kind of helps us out. So by triangle theorem, angle C is congruent to angle C. All parts are congruent. Everything's congruent. So yes, triangles are congruent. All right, so everything is congruent. So then triangle ABC, triangle ABC, DEC. There's a kind of lot going on there, but really just look for all the congruent stuff. The one trick is that there's vertical angles here that are congruent, and those sides are congruent as well. All right. Lastly, okay, we have this idea. All right, so now I have this example. We have to fill out these reasons, and then we're trying to figure out like what's happening with this triangle, right? We're trying to show that LMN is congruent to LON. So these two triangles are congruent, right? We're trying to show that this blue triangle will be congruent to the green triangle. Let's do green, right? Okay. We do know a few things, right? We know LM is congruent to LO, right? It shows us that these two sides are congruent. These angles are congruent. Um, these two angles up top are congruent, right? There's a lot that's showing, right? And we know this, right? And so it says here. So we know all these are congruent. Again, the very first reason, the very first thing you're always supposed to write is the word given. And remember, the very last, right, given there. And then the very last thing we can write, what they tell us, is not the word prove. Again, you never write the word prove. But our very last statement is always going to be whatever we're trying to prove. So we are trying to get to the fact that triangle LMN is congruent to triangle LON. All right. So I have to fill in some stuff in between. Luckily, there's only like two steps between. All right. Okay. So remember, to prove things are congruent, you have to have everything matching. So let's take a look at this middle line, right? Because we haven't said anything about this middle line. Okay. So on this side of the triangle, right, NL is it's present, right? It's part of this triangle. It's also on the same on this other side too, right? They're both there. So what we can say is, since this is the same one, it's on both of them, it's pretty obvious. It's congruent to LN. Since it's on both sides of the triangle, it is congruent. This is a reflexive property, which we talked about before. And it's going to help us, right? Because now we have all the sides are congruent. Now we have to show that these two angles are congruent, right? Showing everything's congruent, it's going to help us out. We're going to have it, all right? And so lastly, right, we have to show, since O is congruent to M, L is congruent, we have to show that this is congruent to that. And this one's actually really easy. It's some kind of angle theorem we already talked about. So we've said before, it's the third angle theorem. We've already used it. And really all it's saying is that these two angles are congruent. And again, to name them, just use the actual letters. L and O is congruent to angle L and M. Okay. So go back, watch this what you need to, try to understand. Do your best with it. It's not too bad. Really, just looking for congruent pieces. That's what all of this was about. Look for stuff that is equal, the same size, same shape, congruent.